Another preseason loss for the Kansas City Chiefs, a tradition as old as any here in Kansas City. But we have some notes from the preseason loss to the Chicago Bears. And I want to start with this. I will be back tonight with some thoughts on the Creed Humphrey contract, the ramifications for this team, what it means moving forward, and what it means to have the highest paid center in the NFL far and away. But that is for later. I'm going to start with a couple of thoughts just sort of on a meta and a outside the game sort of uh, sector, if you will. We have had three preseason games now. Where did the time go? And guys, you are not alone in the feeling that this preseason has zipped by. But unfortunately, this is going to be the way this season goes for the Kansas City Chiefs throughout the season, not just here in the preseason, with all of the time and day changes for this football team. This football team is going to play all over the schedule, all over the week, all over the time zones, and it's going to feel like this. This is going to feel like a very shortened season. Gone are the days where the football season feels as long as it is because of the noon Sunday kickoffs. You can thank the Kansas City Chiefs' success for part of that. You can thank the fact that Patrick Mahomes is the premier player in the league for some of that. But thankfully, lately, the Kansas City Chiefs have had long postseasons as well. So the football season, while I have no doubt it will feel as if it is gone far, far too early, the off seasons have felt just as short because, well, the Kansas City Chiefs are playing all the games there are to play. The next thing I want to say is that this was a different kind of S show than the Jags game. This game was always kind of going to be an S show. There was no doubt in my mind that we were going to struggle to really learn things about this team from this game, and that is the case. Still, I think there are some things that are worth talking about from this game. Number one, Carson Steel got a lot of playing time. This tells me first off, I think he's absolutely on the roster. I think he is a roster lock at this point. I think he is likely running back 3. I don't know that you risk your backup running back this much in the final preseason game with all of those carries in order for him to be your number 2 guy. I think there is something different going there's something different at play when you are talking about Jalen Watson. Jalen Watson got a lot of playing time in this game, but that's because Jalen Watson missed a whole lot of training camp. Jalen Watson needs those miles on his legs. Carson Steel, I think, is the number 3 running back as well as being the starting fullback. So there's pros and cons to that. The pro is you have 2 different positions covered with a single player, your fullback and your third running back. The con is, look, it's going to be difficult to really find a groove for Carson Steel as far as being a running back is concerned if he's also learning all of the fullback stuff during the week, because they are slightly different positions physically, but they're going to be very different responsibility sets. And take that for what you will. Carson Steel does not seem to have a problem with work ethic, so I think that the mental portion of being the third running back and the starting fullback will do just fine for Carson Steel. I think it also means Deneric Prince might not make the 53. I don't know that you carry 4 running backs simply because you have a fullback position on the roster. Deneric Prince does not look at he's an athlete. Deneric Prince absolutely has the measurables. Deneric Prince absolutely looks great at the Underwear Olympics. I don't know that Deneric Prince I don't think he's going to make the 53. I think there is a possibility that he gets passed over for the practice squad at this point, either by Keontae Ingram, someone on the roster, or from someone that gets cut from somewhere else. The Chiefs have shown the want to have a guy on their practice squad who is a veteran but still young and has some upside. A 24, 25-year-old guy, 26-year-old guy at the running back position on their practice squad. I have long been a proponent of Deneric Prince, but this next note on Carson Steel is why I think maybe the time is limited for Deneric Prince. Carson Steel is not just a hammer out there on the football field. He looks good in traffic, and that is something that translates beyond the preseason. Looking good in traffic is absolutely going to help you during regular season games. He is constantly aware of his feet. He is constantly aware of what is around his feet, and that helps him in the middle of the line. Deneric Prince seems to have not quite figured that out yet. I do think there is upside on Deneric Prince. Deneric Prince, if he can, these are things that you don't like. I often say this about defensive ends. You don't kind of learn a spin move. It seems that is something you have or you don't. Footwork in traffic seems to be something you cannot practice, seems to be something that a running back has or does not have. Deneric Prince still seems to get lost in traffic. I was hoping that would not be the case. I was hoping that with a little bit more time he would. He seemed better than that at the college level, right? And we don't get a whole lot of opportunities to see a guy like Deneric Prince in the preseason. He was on the 53 for, I believe, 2 games towards the end of the year, but we didn't really see a whole lot of him at the running back position. So maybe I was wrong about Deneric Prince. Moving on, Derek Nottie looked sticky. So the notes for this are going to be all over the place because it was kind of an S show. But I do not have a whole lot of stuff from this game that I think is easily translatable into actual commentary for the Kansas City Chiefs. Derek Nottie looked sticky. That is not something that is good for a defensive lineman. It's kind of something that Derek Nottie has always battled. He is working his way back. He is sort of on the Jalen Watson train, coming back and needing the reps. He looked more, and obviously, how much of it is him working himself back, how much of it is the assignments and the things that he was told to go out there and work on, as this was just preseason. You're not trying to win every snap. You're trying to get better. He is being told certain directives during this game. Still, he looks like a bottom of the rotation guy to me. That has worked for the Chiefs in the past, that he has been someone who has gotten meaningful snaps for the Chiefs in the past. Maybe this is just the lingering effects of whatever injury he had. Maybe this is just the lingering effects of not playing as much, but he did not look even as explosive as once he had. The next 3 notes here are going to be on the linebackers. There's a lot. This team, part of this is that the Kansas City Chiefs are so good in the post-draft action of UDFA. They have such a reputation for UDFA making the roster, making the practice squad, and playing in games. They have a reputation for going deep in the postseason. So anyone who is going to be a post-draft target is going to want to sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. Oftentimes, those are linebackers. So we look at these names here. The next 3 names here I've got notes on: Cole Christensen, Jack Cochran, and Swayze Bozeman, not to mention Cam Jones, right? Not to mention the linebacker. Oh, I'm blanking on his name right now. The other rookie guy. These are all post-draft players. These are all linebackers. Linebacker is a position in the NFL that has declined in emphasis, just like running back. And these guys can all play. So the Kansas City Chiefs seem to have a glut at the linebacker position, maybe not star power linebackers, but guys that are going to be able to come in and be assignment sound for this team. Cole Christensen looked better at linebacker than I have seen him in the past. He looked more assignment sound. But also, some of that is that he was not counted on to necessarily be a linebacker as much in this game as he was a pass rush specialist. He was being sent on missile missions towards the quarterback, and he plays with a certain level of the guy from Army being a missile, what are the odds? But he's a guy who plays with a good deal of reckless abandon. And if you are being tasked with going after the quarterback, that might be something that absolutely works out for you and works out for you on a massive scale. Now, the next name here, Jack Cochran, I think has cemented himself as the number 4 linebacker on this team. He has versatility. He's a little bit undersized to be in the middle as far as weight is concerned, but he does not seem to play light. He's a guy that is coming into this team and he has a very high athletic profile, and it has taken him a couple years to put that all together and be a contributing linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. Up to last season, he was just a special teams ace, right? So watching him make this progression is a really good thing for this team. This team, I've said it a number of times, is built a lot like a college roster in that all of their starters are the guys that have the experience. Their backups are all young, inexperienced guys. That's just part of what comes with being to so many AFC championship games, winning the division so many consecutive times, winning the Super Bowl so many times, being in the Super Bowl an additional time, and drafting late in the process. On top of that, I think there is a little bit of roster philosophy from Brett Veach. If you have a veteran that has a very high floor, you know who he is, you've seen him other places, but he's going to cost more money, and he's going to maybe be discontent with a backup position. Why take the risk on that over a younger guy who's going to be cheaper, and the Kansas City Chiefs know he can perform, even if the floor is a little bit lower because he might not be assignment sound, he might be younger and less experienced. I almost said more inexperienced, less experienced. You have to weigh the pros and cons to that. The Chiefs are erring very much on the side of a younger guy on whom the floor might fall out because maybe he can't stick in the league, but you know he has the talent to do it. You know he has the tools to do it, and all of those things. So seeing a guy like Jack Cochran sort of climb the ranks for the Kansas City Chiefs is promising, and it speaks to further success, further long-lived success for these Kansas City Chiefs. The final note I have on these linebackers is this. I have not been fair to Swayze Bozeman. I have been overlooking Swayze Bozeman. He was very solid in this game. Now, very solid in a game that you're playing backups, third stringers, and fourth stringers, guys who will be taking other jobs in the next few weeks. How much does that count? That is a question that has to be asked. Unfortunately, it's just one of the sort of bummers of the NFL is that NFL stands for not for long. So there's going to be some movement on this roster. I don't know. The linebackers are going to be hard. The linebackers are going to be a position that is difficult for these Chiefs to really make decisions at. Somebody's going to be left by the wayside. The ninth note that I have here is Owen Carney. Owen Carney, in my opinion, has really shot the ranks here for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that he earned himself a practice squad role for the Chiefs this game. I think that he proved he belongs on the field. He seems a lot to me like Malik Herring when Malik Herring was getting his first reps. He's a very solid defensive end. He's not going to be a very large disruptor, probably, but you have to have guys at the bottom of the rotation. Owen Carney, another UDFA, seems to be a guy that could play for the Kansas City Chiefs at some point. I think this season he is best served on the practice squad. I think you can sneak him through the waiver wire and get him signed. I don't know that he has made enough noise that anyone is going to pluck him from you that way. The next guy here, however, I think that is absolutely not the case. Chris Roland Wallace, who, this is another UDFA, obviously. This is another UDFA that was probably draftable, had a draftable grade, maybe doesn't have extreme amounts of upside. I think that he is a little bit athletically limited, but he's a solid football player, and I think he's going to be on someone's 53 this season. I don't know that he sneaks through the waiver wire. If the Chiefs can sneak him through the waiver wire and land him on the practice squad, that is absolutely a win because he will be an NFL player. Just a quick reminder on that. If someone claims a player from the waiver wire, that player has to be on the 53. You can't claim someone from the waiver wire. I don't believe. I don't believe there is a different set of rules here. I think that if you're going to claim someone from the waiver wire, it has to be for the active 53, or the player has to be willing to sign that contract. I think, right, these are rules that are still a little bit vague to me. I might be wrong on that, but if someone is going to claim Chris Roland Wallace, it has to be for the active roster. The next note I have here, the wide receivers are going to be a tough call here for the Chiefs. I have long championed Nico Remigio. I do believe that he is an NFL player. I do believe he could contribute for the Kansas City Chiefs. I do believe that the floor on Nico Remigio is higher than a lot of the guys on this roster. I think the floor on Nico Remigio is higher than Mecole Hardman. I think that the time the Kansas City Chiefs have had Mecole Hardman, you're seeing Mecole Hardman closer to his ceiling. That is, in my opinion, evidenced by the fact that he went to the Jets and absolutely disappeared. The Chiefs know how to use Mecole Hardman. Maybe the ceiling is not there for Nico Remigio the way that it is for Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman, underrated in his first couple years here in Kansas City. Maybe not underrated for a second-round draft pick, but underrated from, maybe not underrated from the standpoint of also exactly where they drafted Mecole, but I think underrated from a productivity standpoint. Toney, Kadarius Toney, the ceiling is so high. The potential is absolutely there. His abilities, even just as a punt returner, are so enticing. Kadarius Toney gets separation on his routes. In my opinion, if I were calling these shots for the Kansas City Chiefs, it would be to trade Kadarius Toney because someone's going to want him. The upside is simply too enticing. The separation ability, the movement ability, the abilities as a punt returner are too enticing to overlook. The floor, however, for Kadarius Toney is something approaching dunce level, D-U-N-C-E. When you start thinking about the wide receiver core and the things that went wrong for the Chiefs last season, is that too many players were too close to their floor, not being able to catch the football, maybe not running the right route, things like that. At some point, I think that this offense, and that started to manifest towards the middle of the season to where the offense couldn't get going. Eventually, Rashee Rice emerged from that gunk, from that squalor sort of happening at the wide receiver position, and the Chiefs offense found some footing and carried that footing into the playoffs. Do you want the same rut to be able to befall your offense? I think that is going to be a deciding factor. I think that has to be a deciding factor for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that a player like Nico Remigio does not allow that rut to happen, because I think you can count on Nico Remigio to sell out in order to make the catch, if nothing else. Part of the drops that we saw from Kadarius Toney were concentration drops. Part of the drops we saw from Kadarius Toney were the fact that he was trying to make his third, fourth, and fifth move before he had caught the ball. That is the sort of thing, an incompletion in those situations kills the drive. A completion without run after the catch in those situations keeps your offense on the field. Those are the things that I think we can see from Nico Remigio. Is the talent too enticing to this offense? The ceiling too enticing to this offense, especially when we've already seen a rash of injuries for this wide receiver core. We've seen a rash of injuries for the Chiefs in general. I don't know anything on the Wanya Morris injury really to make a comment, other than the fact that Andy Reid said that he's probably going to be okay. It was just sort of tweaking that knee again, which contributes to the questions at the on the offensive line. What numbers are you going to see there? I think we've talked a lot about the Chiefs keeping 7 wide receivers in Kansas City. And then at that point, you're taking away from other roster positions, but you also have to brace yourself for the injuries that are bound to occur, that indeed have already occurred and are going to affect weeks 1, 2, maybe 3, and 4 with the Hollywood Brown injury. Somebody else goes down, you're going to be really hurting if you only keep 5 wide receivers. Somebody else goes down, all of a sudden, Hollywood Brown and Justin Watson. We've already seen him have an ankle deal, a foot deal, I guess it was, this preseason. He goes down, you carried 5 wide receivers, Hollywood Brown and Justin Watson are down, you've got 3 guys. Another question you have to ask, what about the practice squad? You're going to keep at least 1 wide receiver on the practice squad. I think Cornell Powell's time in Kansas City is up. I think Cornell Powell has not proven himself in the regular season against starters as a wide receiver. It's going to be an interesting numbers crunch for the Chiefs on their active roster and for the practice squad. Kadarius Toney's not going to be on your practice squad. So do you keep Kadarius Toney if you cannot manifest a trade market for him? Because you probably can sneak Nico Remigio to the practice squad. I don't know that any of the Jaron Hayeks, et cetera, of this team have proven they need to be on the practice squad. You've got Washington, who you can probably sneak to the practice squad. But outside of that, I don't know what you're doing at the wide receiver position from the practice squad standpoint for the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe they go shopping on cutdown day. It could be a very active cutdown day for the Chiefs, depending on how many of the players they want to sneak to their practice squad end up getting claimed through waivers. Now, the last note that I have here is maybe sort of a bummer, but maybe I'm just absolutely wrong. It is difficult for me to ascertain what the problem is with this offensive line, especially with the backups. Obviously, the tackle position, I think, is getting this offensive line in a lot of trouble. Chuck Godric in the preseason has been, in my opinion, on a downward trajectory. He looked a lot more like an offensive lineman in that week 1 game than he had last season. The preseason week 1 game against the Lions or against the Jaguars, he has seemed to fall off a little bit more thereafter, but the struggles seem to follow Hunter Nourzad. It was Hunter Nourzad and Chuck Godric that I thought were having problems last week, probably in week 1, 2. And then this past game, I thought that it was between Hunter Nourzad and Mike Caliendo at center. Those two were letting through some pressure on the quarterbacks. They were letting through some defensive linemen against the run. I thought that was part of what got Deneric Prince in a little bit of trouble, and he's not, as we talked about, the best in traffic. So that's going to be an interesting. I thought C.J. Hansen, for example, looked pretty good. Ethan Driscoll, I thought, looked pretty good. Hunter Nourzad, I thought executed his blocks well insofar as they were his blocks. There's a lot of assignment confusion for me when watching the offensive line. Maybe what is happening, maybe putting this out there, but I'm not saying absolutely pounding the table, this is what's going on. It may be that wherever Hunter Nourzad is, he's not trading off the oncomers as he should. That might be what's happening. It might be that Caliendo had a bad game. It may be that Chuck Godric was a little bit faulty before. Whatever it is, it seems to me to be trouble following Hunter Nourzad. Those are the notes that I have for this game. Again, I will be back tonight with thoughts on the Creed Humphrey contract, the Creed Humphrey signing, what it means for the Chiefs going forward. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button, because the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, and I hope to have you back for the next one.